Peace. Welcome to the YouTube live book reading of Clinical Application of Respiratory Care. I'm your moderator and narrator, Uriel Riley, live from the light in LA. So, we pick up Chapter 3. The mechanics of ventilation. Very, very powerful, masterful. Chapter 3. We made it. Peace, YouTube. Highest heart love. Welcome to the corner of YouTube where we come from peace, live from the light, bringing you masterful work. And we are now in Chapter 3. The mechanics of ventilation. There can be no argument that the lungs exist solely for the purpose of exchanging gases between the blood and the atmosphere, a process known as external respiration. The evaluation and support of external respiration is the basis of all respiratory care. The goal is to assure proper interrelationship between the two requisites for external respiration: pulmonary blood flow and gas movement in and out of the lungs. The process of gas movement in and out of the pulmonary system is defined as ventilation. To apply the principles of respiratory care, one must understand the mechanics of ventilation and what is involved in its artificial support. In general, medical disciplines approach the process of ventilation from the physiologic and pathophysiologic viewpoint. Although this knowledge is essential in respiratory care, it is not adequate in of itself. The respiratory care clinician must be concerned with the mechanics of ventilation as well as the physiology. To approach this broad and complex subject, we have chosen to discuss this subject in 5 sections. 1. The lung-thorax relationship. 2. The physics of ventilation. 3. The pulmonary function studies. And 4. The work of breathing. And 5. The mechanical support of ventilation. Thank you so much. Welcome. Peace, everyone. Thank you for being here for the live YouTube book reading of Chapter 3, Clinical Application of Respiratory Care. Masterful work, live from the light. Highest heart love. Thank you so much, Coco. I had to. You know it. You felt me. Thank you. Thank you so much. We just went over the 5 sections of the mechanics of ventilation. middle of page 52, the lung thorax relationship. At the very root of understanding the mechanics of ventilation is the necessity for a thorough knowledge of the manner in which muscular energy exerted on the thoracic cage is transmitted into molecular movement of gases in and out of the thoracic cavity via the pulmonary tree. The entire mechanism is based on the simple fact that there exists elastic forces in lung tissue and chest wall tissue. Elasticity is the property of matter, causing it to return to its resting state after deformation by some external force. At the end of the normal expiration, there are chest wall elastic forces tending to expand intrathoracic volume. These forces are balanced by lung tissue elastic forces tending to reduce the intrathoracic volume. Figure 1 or 3-1. The communication linking these two opposing forces is the pleura, its visceral layer attached to lung and its parietal layer attached to the chest wall. The visceral and parietal pleurae are held together by film of fluid in a manner similar to two glass microscope slides that are wet and stuck together. The slides can readily move back and forth but resist being pulled apart. And here is figure 3-1. Thank you so much for being here. Highest heart love. Isn't it peace, love, and abundant light? Thank you. Thank you, Coco Elo Shun. We do it live from the light. That's how we do it. Abundance. And the self wisdom and self knowledge. That's why we're reading this book. You manifested this, right? Thank you so much. I am so grateful and thankful. And we are now in chapter 3. So, what I showed you there is A and B and C. And you see the arrows directing outside and inside of the lungs directing inside. Okay, let's be clear. Hi, it's Heart Love. We're reading Clinical Application of Respiratory Care by Barry A. Shapiro, Ronald A. Harrison, and Carole A. Trout. Second edition, 1979. MCAT, Master Level Wisdom and Knowledge. It says, Figure 3-1. A represents resting state of normal lungs when removed from the chest cavity, i.e., elasticity causes total collapse. B represents resting state of normal chest wall and diaphragm when apex is open to atmosphere and the thoracic contents removed. C represents end expiration in the normal, intact thorax. Note that elastic forces of lung and chest wall are in opposite directions. The pleural surfaces link these two opposing forces. See text, what we just read and explained. The pleural space is in reality a potential space between two layers of pleura that is normally occupied by a small amount of fluid. This pleural fluid acts as a lubricant to decrease friction as the pleural layers slide along one another. The parietal pleura is attached to the interior of the wall of the thorax and moves with the chest wall. The visceral pleura lining the lung moves along the thoracic wall because of its adherence to the parietal pleura. The same mechanism is simultaneously expanding lung tissue as the diaphragm descends. The average resting intrapleural pressure is approximately 4 to 5 centimeters of water less than the atmospheric pressure. This subatomic atmospheric pressure is a result of the opposing elastic forces of the thorax and lung. During a strong inspiratory effort against a closed glottis, the average intrapleural pressure can drop to as low as negative 50 centimeters of water subatmospheric. On the other hand, during a forced expiration, the intrapleural pressure may rise to as high as positive 70 centimeters of water above atmospheric. Gas flows in response to pressure gradients. So, delta P. In the lung, this pressure gradient is termed trans-airway pressure, the pressure difference between mouth and alveolus. Delta P transpulmonary pressure equals P mouth minus P alveoli. That's the equation. Trans-airway pressures must equal zero at the end of inspiration and end expiration since flow has stopped at both these points in time. Transpulmonary pressure, see figure 21.1, is the pressure difference between mouth and intrapleural pressure. In the spontaneously breathing patient, inspiration occurs when the normal resting balance of equal and opposite forces exerted by the thorax and the lungs is changed. The muscles of ventilation upset this balance and cause the thorax to enlarge and the diaphragm to descend. Since the two pleural layers normally are not separated, some increase in subatomic atmospheric pressure in the intrapleural space results. This increased transpulmonary pressure is associated with a decreased intra-alveolar pressure below atmosphere, creating a positive trans-airway pressure. Assuming a patient airway, air flows into the lung until trans-airway pressure equals zero. With the cessation of active muscle effort at the end of inspiration, the elastic forces in the lung and chest dominate and result in super atmospheric alveolar pressure, creating a negative trans-airway pressure. Thus, gas flows out of the lungs until once again trans-airway pressure equals zero. Woo! That's right. Coco, bullshit, you know that polarities. That's right. Ding! Thank you for helping us drop that pin. Gratitude and highest heart love. Bottom line, right? Polarities and needs to equal zero. This is what we learn in simple algebraic equations, right? This is how this is how we understand the VO2 max as well. Only the real knowledgeable of this information know. Yeah, that's why we're doing this. It's okay. You know, it's okay. We are giving it to you free, live from the light, reading these books. So you get it. And you say you don't get it. You know, you'll know that you get it. Because, oh, if I go to this foundation information, well, then either I'm trying to go against the principles or I'm adhering to the principles. And when you're adhering to the principles of nature, you're honoring and adhering to yourself. Middle of page 54. During a strong inspiratory, yes, that is 70 centimeters of water above atmosphere. Gas flows in response to pressure gradients. That's right. Okay. In the spontaneously breathing patient, inspiration occurs when the normal resting balance of equal and opposite forces exerted by the thorax and the lungs is changed. The muscles of ventilation upset this balance and cause the thorax to enlarge and the diaphragm to descend. Since the two pleural layers normally are not separated, some increase in subatomic spheric pressure in the intrapleural space results. This increased transpulmonary pressure is associated with decreased intraalveolar pressure. Okay, I did just read that. It's just, we take our time. That's what mastering stuff is, mastering the information, not just running through. Like we have to we have to honor the people that came before us. Ashe, right? I know you get it. I know we have to. Let it sink in live from the light. Look at the view. Look at the light rays and feel that information with a place that says, oh, yes, this is why we are divine. With the cessation of active muscle effort at the end of inspiration, the elastic forces in the lung and chest dominate and result in atmospheric alveolar pressure, creating a negative trans-airway pressure. Thus, gas flows out of the lungs until once again trans-airway pressure equals zero. Physics of ventilation. The principle of elastance. Elastic forces can most simply be defined as the forces acting to return a substance to its resting state. A substance that manifests this property is called an elastic substance. For instance, a rubber band may be stretched by active forces, but when released, the forces within the rubber band act to restore it to the resting state. Those forces acting to return the rubber band to its resting state are called the elastic forces. The lung is an elastic organ, i.e., it has many forces acting to return it to its resting or collapsed state. The two primary elastic forces are the interstitial elastic fibers and the fluid lining, the alveolar surface. Thus, we may think of an alveolus as a semisphere that is highly elastic, since all elastic spheres behave according to the physical law of Laplace. This becomes an essential physical law to understand in respiratory care. Law of Laplace. We're at the middle of page 55. The Laplace equation, as applied to geometric spheres, states P equals 2 times T over R. P represents the distending pressure within the alveolus, or dynes per square centimeter. The T is surface tension of the alveolar fluid, dynes per centimeter, and R is the radius of the alveolus in centimeters. This relationship indicates that the distending pressure necessary to expand the alveolus is determined by 1. The surface tension properties of the liquid substance lining the sphere, and 2. The radius of curvature of the sphere. Inherent is this relationship is the fact that if surface tension remains unchanged, the smaller the radius, the greater the distending pressure must become to maintain the alveolar volume. If such a situation truly existed in the lung, all alveoli would have to be the same size so that the smaller alveoli would not empty their air into the larger ones. However, all alveoli are not the same size. In fact, some alveoli are 4 to 5 times larger than others. If surface tension remained constant, the inspiratory airflow would preferentially inflate the larger alveoli, while little or no air entered the smaller alveoli. The end result would obviously be one huge extended alveolus with all of the others totally collapsed. Surfactant. The obvious reconciliation of this mechanical dilemma would be the capability of altering the surface tension of the alveolar fluid lining so that a state of equilibrium could be maintained. As early as 1929, it was concluded that the active surface forces in the alveolar lining fluid must be less than the water of or plasma. It was also suspected that the surface tension must be variable depending upon the size of the alveolus. Recent studies have shown that the surface tension of the alveolar lining fluid is indeed variable and decreases as the alveolar surface area is reduced. The substance surfactant is responsible for this variability. Woo! I whew, live from the light. Let me take. Oh, love water. This is so great, right? Ah, Shay. Love water time. L. Love to all the August babies. All of this. Hey, let's take a just deep breath. Respiratory care. Thank you. Ooh. Mm. Thank you so much. Just bask in the light. Breathe. That's what this is for, you know. No AI can ever do this. Can never be redone. I'm the only one that can redo any of this. And that's what this lesson is, right? You know, it's only for the self. Like today, I am 16,781 days and nights on this planet. It's just my reality. It's my mastery. Just like the turtle, take our good old time. Like the opossum, can slow our heart rate down to where you can barely even know. That's respiratory care, sustainability. Connect the dots. La 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 la. Right, Coco Ello shoe as we let it marinate. That's right. Oh, I love how we are designed. Thank you for saying. I love how we are designed. I love it. The principle of compliance. Oh, no, no, no. We're at the top of page 56, right? Here we go. Surface tension is the molecular force present on the surface of a liquid that tends to make the surface area exposed to that atmosphere as small as possible. Simply stated, the molecules on the surface of water are much closer together than elsewhere in the fluid. In an elastic sphere, surface tension would play a very major role in the tendency for that sphere to collapse. Surfactant decreases surface tension. Ding! That last line, guys and gals, guys, heart love divine beings. Surfactant decreases surface tension. Alveolar critical volume. All alveoli have a critical volume, i.e., a volume below which the elastic forces become overwhelming and cause complete collapse of the alveolus. One might think of a of the critical volume as the alveolar volume, below which surface tension constantly exceeds the distending pressure. This causes the radius to become progressively smaller until ultimately the alveolus collapses. Alveolar elastance. Keeping all these complex relationships in mind and yet attempting to simplify the concepts to a workable level, we may generalize the application of the law of Laplace to the functioning of alveoli in the following way. There is a critical volume at which the potential internal expanding forces can equal or exceed the external elastic forces which are tending to collapse the alveolus. Below the critical volume, these external forces are overwhelming and a total collapse eventually ensues. Above the critical volume, the surface acting substances work in such a way as to maintain a dynamic state of equilibrium. This is accomplished by a balance between the expanding pressures tending to inflate the alveolus and the surface tension properties tending to collapse the alveolus. The principle of compliance. Bottom of page 56. We're preparing the next generation for the MCAT. Oh my goodness, it's so awesome. Harry, thank you so much. Highest heart love. We are divine beings, divinely designed. There's no doubt about it. And reading work like this really just stamps it, you know. And that's what I wanted to do. Because, yeah, I may know the information. Some people out there that hone into this piece, they know the information. But it's just like with love, right? That's why I come back on here and redo stuff like this. You'll see it in almost all the readings I've redone. But I learned through this leveling up and being a master in my field, a master of my world, is you refine things. And when you're refining things, you're remastering. And the refinement of ourselves and of information and mastering it. It's just like love. You're reinforcing it in a divine way. Love reinforced. You know I love it. All right, here we go. The principle of compliance. The lung is an elastic organ with inherent forces constantly tending to make it collapse. It is obvious that these forces function as elastic forces during the process of expiration. However, part of the time the lung must be inspiring, and therefore the elastic forces tending to collapse the lung must be overcome. In other words, a force greater than the elastic forces must be applied in the opposite direction before the lungs can be expanded. Instead of considering the elastic forces as those tending to collapse the lung, we may consider them as forces which must be overcome to expand the lung. Forces opposing expansion of the lung are referred to in terms of compliance. Mathematically, compliance is the reciprocal of elastance. To use our previously stated example of the rubber band, the force that is needed to stretch the rubber band will be dependent upon the elastic forces tending to return the rubber band to its resting state. A highly compliant substance would be one in which there are few elastic forces. Therefore, it would take little force to stretch the substance. In other words, a substance with a high compliance is one with few elastic forces. A substance with a low compliance would be one possessing great elastic forces and therefore could be stretched only with great difficulty. Compliance can be defined as the volume change in the lung per unit of pressure change in the lung. C equals delta V over delta P. C equals compliance, V equals change in volume, and P equals change in pressure. In simple terms, the greater the pressure that is needed to allow a given volume change, the less compliant the lung. That's a big understanding right there. The principle of airway resistance. Gas flows from a region of higher pressure to one of lower pressure. Obviously, the rate at which the volume of gas is displaced, flow, is a function of the pressure gradient and the resistances to that gas flow. Thus, we may make the following statement: resistance equals pressure gradient divided by flow, or R equals delta P over F. A more exact relationship between pressure difference and gas flow can be derived if we know the nature of the flow, i.e., whether it is laminar or turbulent. This is key. Laminar flow. Laminar gas flow refers to a streamlined molecular flow in which there is little friction between the molecules of gas themselves and mostly friction between the molecules and the sides of the tube. Therefore, laminar flow through a tube would have a cone-shaped pattern, i.e., the gas molecules near the side of the tube would be subject to friction with that surface and would tend to travel slower than the gas molecules in the center of the tube. Figure 3.2. This phenomenon was first theorized in 1915 and demonstrated to be present in the pulmonary tree in 1954. The phenomenon undoubtedly plays a great role in the respiratory process of the obtunded and intubated patient with small tidal volumes, in that it helps explain why tidal volumes of less than the patient's theoretical anatomic dead space may provide gas delivery to the alveoli. Laminar flow follows the general law the of Pascal, which states that at the constant driving pressure, the flow rate of gas will vary directly with the fourth power of the radius of the airway. Yes. Thus, we can see how small changes in airway caliber can greatly affect the delivery of air to the alveoli. And here is figure 3.2. Oh my goodness. As within, so without. Even our world is designed like the, yes, that's right, intricate body. That's right. So, look at this. Here we go. We have different forces acting, right? Within it. It's figure 3-2. Thank you so much for reading this masterful book with us. It is amazing. Clinical Application of Respiratory Care by Barry A. Shapiro, Ronald A. Harrison, and Carole A. Trout. Man, this is big, right? We are doing it, reading it all together too. Like, so big. It says schematic concept of laminar gas flow. A. A turbulent gas and gas flow. O. Laminar gas flow A and turbulent gas flow B. C. All right. All right. A is straight lines. B is curved lines. Let's look at it again. I want to get it on here because this is the redo for a reason, right? We just take our time and just walk through it. Anyone taking the MCAT, this is the channel we are, or anyone planning on taking in the next few years. This is going to be valuable information for you, just to be able to access whenever you like. Thank you, YouTube. Highest heart love. How's the feed, Coco? Yeah. Happy Monday, goddess. Okay, so turbulent flow. Turbulent flow is present when gas molecules are interreacting in a random manner, and the resistances are not only at the sides of the tube but also caused by molecular collision. High flow rates, especially through irregular tubes, result in a breakdown of laminar flow. With turbulent flow, the viscosity of the gas is not critical, but rather the density of the gas is the major factor. All other factors being equal, resistance to flow is greater when the flow is turbulent as opposed to laminar. Okay. Tracheobronchial flow. Tracheobronchial flow is a descriptive term given to the mixture of laminar and turbulent flows that are normally found in the pulmonary tree. This circumstance makes accurate measurements of airway resistance extremely difficult. In respiratory care, we must always be aware that external apparatus connected to the airway can be sites of tremendously increased airway resistances. Airway patency. At the bottom of page 58, the upper airway is normally responsible for 45% of the total airway resistance, and of course, this can be tremendously increased by such factors as obstruction caused by foreign material, swelling of the upper airway, etc. In the lower airway, the resistance is markedly affected by the patency of the airways. The large airways have a significant amount of structural rigidity, whereas the bronchioles are dependent primarily on transmural pressure gradients for their patency. This is big. All right, I'm gonna read this. Definitely. It has a fingerprint on it. That means I was playing in the Bogan Villas and reading this, or underline it at least. That's funny. You want to see? You want? You want to see? Look, that's how you know I was playing in the Bogan Villas. Well, I was underlined. All right, this is awesome. Airway patency. Oh no, I just did. Pulmonary function studies. Wait, did I do airway patency? Yeah, I didn't do it yet. Okay. The upper airway is normally responsible for. Oh no, I did do it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for putting it. The mechanics of ventilation is where we are in chapter 3. Pulmonary function studies. Wow. Page 59. We're doing it! Oh my goodness, this is so deep. Oh my goodness, this is freaking epic. For real, like we're doing this live too for free. Pulmonary function studies. It should be appreciated that any consideration of pulmonary function testing applied to respiratory care is not as extensive as it is when applied to clinical aspects of pulmonary disease. The discipline of pulmonary medicine uses pulmonary function studies to measure lung volumes, analyze flow rates, study diffusion capacities, and study the distribution of ventilation. Multiple lung function studies are required to provide a complete quantitative evaluation of lung disease. In respiratory care, we use pulmonary function tests to evaluate mechanical ability, mechanical efficiency, and gross mechanical abnormalities in the in, in the ventilatory system. We are concerned not only with the mechanical function of the pulmonary system at the time of testing, but also in assessing the ability of that system to meet stress by increasing its work. Because of these circumstances, we feel justified in discussing pulmonary function solely in terms of mechanics, and we remind the reader that what follows is not meant to be a treatise on diagnostic pulmonary function testing. Rather, its purpose is to provide basic information for the application of pulmonary function measurements to the field of respiratory care. And we'll pause right here in the middle of page 59, right by the fingerprint. Highest heart. What an amazing read. I had to redo it, you know. I wanted to do it better. Refinement, you know. This is what our lungs is always doing. Expiration. Inspiration, right? Coco, thank you so much. Gratitude and highest heart love for being here. Thank you to all my mods, all my family and friends. Happy August. Oh, man. It's the great President Barack Obama birthday. Happy solar return. What a great man. I had the pleasure of working for the great First Lady's program, Youth Build. I was working there, helping so many people who were building houses. It's just amazing, man. You know, like, and that showed me. We do these rush buildings. We work with Habitat for Humanity, right? And we would go out and build a house, multiple houses, and dedicate them to people. And my students would work with this, and I would help, obviously. And we would build houses in a week and dedicate them. Tampa Bay, Florida. Yeah, it's a fact. And they still do it to this day. You know, that's why I know that it's destined, it's ordained for me to give out the information and knowledge I know and have accumulated. We're only here for so long. We only get so many heartbeats. It's important we spend that time giving willingly and receiving gracefully. Highest heart love. Yes. Man, love to all my family, all my beloveds. Highest heart love. Peace, Coco Eloshun. Thank you for the meditation yesterday. Highest honor and heart love. Transcending time is just such a beautiful thing. That's what we do here. You know, that's why I bring this peace. It's most important that I get on here and do it right. Show others. You can do it. You can do it. Don't ever think you can't do it. Look at this book. We know that it was meant for us to do. Oh, thank you so much. I love you. Love you. I love you. It was meant for us. It really was. Right? Blissful evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Coco. Nice heart love. We did it again. We did it again. We started a new chapter. I love you, 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 you. I love you. Peace, peace. I will see you soon. Thank you so much for being here live from the light, where we read books and learn from masters. Peace.